The Eluktronics MAX-15 is one of the lightest gaming laptops available that's still able to pack in up to RTX 2070 graphics. But just how well does it actually perform in games? I've tested 20 different games at all setting levels and also compared it with other laptops to help you decide if it's worth it. My configuration of the Eluktronics MAX-15 has an Intel i7-9750H CPU, NVIDIA RTX 2070 graphics, there's no Max-Q here, 16GB of memory and dual channel, and a 15.6-inch 1080p 144Hz screen. You can also change the specs a bit when ordering. There's an RTX 2060 model too. You can find updated prices for both models linked in the description. The control panel software lets you select different performance modes. I've done all testing with turbo mode, which enables electro boost, and I had fan boost enabled for best results. There's a minus 0.05 volt undervolt to the CPU by default too, and my unit has stock thermal paste. The MAX-15 is quite impressive as it's under 2cm thick and weighs around 1.7 kilos or 3.8 pounds, yet can still pack full RTX 2070 graphics inside, so let's see how it goes. We'll only be covering gaming performance in this video, so if you're new to the channel, you'll definitely want to get subscribed for the upcoming full review. Let's start out by going through all games at all setting levels, then afterwards we'll see how the MAX-15 compares with some other laptops. Red Dead Redemption 2 was tested using the game's built-in benchmark tool. High settings was still able to give decent average frame rates considering this is a resource-heavy game. Battlefield 5 was tested in campaign mode. I've got the results with RTX enabled, shown by the green bars, and RTX off, shown by the purple bars. It was pretty playable with RTX on, though as a first-person shooter game, you'll probably want higher FPS that can be obtained with RTX off, which ran much better. Control was also tested with and without RTX enabled. The game still plays okay with lower frame rates for the most part, so RTX, even with the highest setting, was usable, but I personally preferred high settings with RTX off, which averaged above 60 FPS. Apex Legends was tested with either all settings at maximum or all settings at the lowest possible values, as it doesn't have predefined setting presets. The 144 FPS frame cap was being hit at minimum settings, and even maxed out it was still running well, easily above 100 FPS. Call of Duty Modern Warfare was tested in campaign mode, and I've also tested it with settings either maxed out or at minimum. Minimum settings was almost at 100 FPS in this test. However, it still played pretty well even with everything at maximum. Borderlands 3 was tested using the game's built-in benchmark, and even with the highest setting preset, we're pretty much averaging 60 FPS, which is a great result for a gaming laptop, and is definitely due to the RTX 2070 graphics we've got here. Shadow of the Tomb Raider was again tested with the built-in benchmark, and the results were okay, but I'll show you how different laptops compare in this game and some others soon. Ghost Recon Breakpoint was also tested with the benchmark tool, and this was another demanding game that was still able to surpass 60 FPS even with the highest setting preset due to the 2070 graphics that we're dealing with. Fortnite was tested with the replay feature, and as a less demanding game, epic settings wasn't too far behind the refresh rate of the screen, so no problems playing it at all, while medium settings would give us even 1% low performance above the screen's refresh rate. Overwatch is another less demanding game and was tested in the practice range. Again, even with the epic setting preset, the frame rates are very high, with the 1% low not that far below the refresh rate of the screen, so excellent performance. CSGO was tested using the Euletical FPS benchmark, and the results aren't too different compared to other laptops with lower tier GPUs. This test seems to be more CPU heavy, and once we're at frame rates this high, there's usually more of a benefit seen from laptops that allow you to disable Optimus, which unfortunately the MAX-15 does not support. Dota 2 was tested playing in the middle lane, and as is typically the case with this game, higher end graphical power in most laptops hardly makes a difference as the limitation tends to be the i7 CPU. Either way, normal results here, which means it's performing extremely well. Rainbow Six Siege was tested with the built-in benchmark but using Vulkan, which was recently added to the game. If you saw my recent blog post at Jarrod'sTech, I mentioned I'll be moving to Vulkan for future testing as it tends to perform better than the older DirectX 11 implementation. I'll leave a link to that in the description if you're interested. Anyway, excellent results here. Metro Exodus was tested using the built-in benchmark. Most parts of the game perform a fair bit better than this, so don't take these results as a good indication of what to expect throughout the entire game. It's more of a worst case. The Division 2 was also tested with the built-in benchmark, and the results here seem better compared to most other laptops. The 1% low in particular isn't quite as far back as it usually is, so it appears that the RTX 2070 is providing some benefit here. PUBG was tested using the replay feature. Even at ultra settings, it was possible to reach 100 FPS. However, we could reach the same level in 1% low performance with the very low setting preset, which would deliver a smoother experience. Assassin's Creed Odyssey was tested with the built-in benchmark, and as a resource-heavy game, the frame rates weren't that high with the higher setting presets. However, hitting 60 FPS in this test for a laptop at very high settings is a fair result. Far Cry New Dawn was also tested with the game's benchmark, and for the most part, the results really aren't that much different when compared to most other laptops I've tested with lower GPUs, as it seems to be more limited by the i7 processor. The Witcher 3 was playing fine even with max settings. I don't think it really sees a benefit from super high FPS. However, stepping back just one setting level would perform a fair bit better without too much loss to visual quality. F1 2019 was tested using the game's benchmark tool, and although max settings had decent average FPS, simply stepping down one preset to high settings was able to score more for the 1% low than the average at max settings. Let's also take a look at how this config of the Eluktronics MAX-15 compares with other laptops. Use these results as a rough guide only, as they were tested at different times with different drivers. In Battlefield 5, I've got the MAX-15 highlighted in red near similarly spec'd machines. The performance is ahead of the thicker Asus Scar 3, which also has RTX 2070 graphics. However, it's a little behind the thicker GP75. Granted, that does have a GPU overclock by default. The MAX-15 is behind the GX502 here, as that one gets a boost from G-Sync. However, it's also worth noting the GX502 weighs more than 300 grams or 0.6 pounds more than the MAX-15. Definitely a fair result for the weight and size, coming in just a couple of FPS behind some of the 2080 Max-Q laptops. These are the results from Far Cry 5 with ultra settings in the built-in benchmark. This time the results are very similar to the GP75, and probably as this is a CPU sensitive test, so I suspect the small undervolt would be aiding it here. The GX502 is still ahead though. The ability for it to bypass Optimus typically gives it an edge. However, its extra weight is probably additional cooling material. These are the results from Shadow of the Tomb Raider with the built-in benchmark at highest settings. Like the other games, the MAX-15 was a little ahead of the Scar 3 with same specs. However, as more of a GPU-heavy test, the overclocked GP75 was in front. However, it's still a fair improvement when compared to the 2060 laptops. With the RTX 2070, the performance is comparable to the other 2070-based laptops I've tested, despite the MAX-15 being on the thinner side and easily lighter when compared against all the other options. In terms of power-to-weight ratio, the MAX-15 would be ahead. It's also generally cheaper than most others too. The config I've got here goes for $1,600 US, and for comparison, that Asus GX502 that was a little ahead usually goes for over $2,000. I've also got the Eluktronics MAX-17 here too. It's got the same specs, but in a larger chassis. So in theory, there's more cooling capacity, meaning it may end up performing better. Let me know if you'd be interested in a comparison between the MAX-15 and MAX-17. And let me know what you thought of the gaming performance from the MAX-15 gaming laptop down in the comments. If you're new to the channel, consider getting subscribed for the full review to see everything this machine has to offer.